What happens when a boy who once sang for spare coins on Manila's busy street stands under the brightest lights in the world, and sings not for money, but for a dream? Under the golden glare of America's Got Talent, a small figure stepped forward, barefoot, nervous, but holding a quiet courage that seemed too old for his age. His name was Miguel Santos, a 14-year-old boy from Quezon City, who had lived more days of hunger than comfort. Behind those tired eyes was a voice that had carried him through loneliness, echoing softly through the alleys where he once sang for strangers who barely noticed him. In the audience, Simon Cowell, the man known for his sharp words and harder heart, watched with his usual folded arms. But even he didn't know that the next few minutes would touch something deep within him, something he hadn't felt in years. And sitting beside Simon, Amelia Rivera, one of the show's producers, felt her heart beating faster. She was the one who had discovered Miguel after a viral clip of him singing on a jeepney reached her inbox. She had seen many talents before, but there was something about this boy's voice, a mix of sorrow, hope, and purity, that haunted her. As Miguel took a deep breath and the opening chords of Hotel California filled the hall, silence wrapped the stage. The lights softened, the crowd leaned forward, and even Simon's usual smirk faded. This wasn't just another audition, it was a moment of truth. Would the world finally see the beauty hidden beneath poverty's shadow? Would this boy's song, born from pain, finally find its echo in the hearts of millions? The story that followed wasn't just about music. It was about survival, faith, and the sound of a broken heart daring to dream again. Miguel Santos had always been small for his age, a thin boy with sun-kissed skin, messy black hair, and eyes that carried both innocence and exhaustion. He lived with his widowed mother, Rosa, in a one-room shack beside a crowded market in Quezon City. The sound of tricycles and jeepneys was their daily music, and the scent of fried fish and gasoline clung to the air like a memory that never left. Since his father's passing 2 years ago, Miguel had become the quiet strength of the house. Each morning, he helped his mother sell boiled corn at the corner of the street before hurrying to school, when he could afford to go. But more often, he spent his afternoons singing on sidewalks, hoping a few coins dropped into his cup could help buy rice for dinner. He wasn't bitter. Life had taught him early that sadness didn't feed you. So he smiled, even when his slippers broke, even when the rain soaked his thin clothes. Music was his shelter, the one place where he didn't feel poor or forgotten. Miguel had discovered an old, cracked guitar in a junk pile behind a store. He spent hours repairing it with rubber bands and wire, his small hands learning every chord from memory. The first song he ever learned was Hotel California, from an old man who played it once near the bus station. The song stayed in his soul, haunting, mysterious, and free. He had a habit of closing his eyes when he sang, as if he could see another world behind the darkness, one where his mother smiled without worry, and their home didn't leak when it rained. Despite his hardships, Miguel wasn't hardened by life. He was gentle, grateful for every kind word, and endlessly curious about what lay beyond the narrow streets he called home. Deep down, he believed that if he could just sing loud enough, maybe, just maybe, the world would listen. That hope, fragile yet fierce, was what carried him from the streets of Manila to a stage that could change everything. There were nights when the world seemed too heavy for a boy like Miguel. Nights when hunger clawed at his stomach, and the rain drummed endlessly on the thin tin roof above his bed. Rosa would pretend to sleep, but Miguel often saw her wipe away silent tears, counting the few coins they had left. Those moments carved a quiet pain into his heart, a child's helplessness watching his mother's strength slowly fade. He blamed himself sometimes. For being too young to work, for not earning enough, for still dreaming when reality screamed otherwise. Every time he sang on the street and people passed by without looking, a small part of him wondered if dreams were meant only for the rich, for those who had lights, not shadows. But his voice, that fragile, trembling voice, refused to die. It was the only thing that gave meaning to his struggles. And yet, even that began to fade when Rosa fell ill. Her coughing worsened each week, her body weakening as medical bills grew impossible. Miguel would hum softly to her at night, singing Hotel California, in the dark, hoping his voice could chase away the pain he couldn't afford to cure. One evening, as he sat outside the small clinic where Rosa had been admitted, he overheard two nurses talking about him, about how beautiful his singing was, and how someone had posted his performance online. A stranger's phone had captured him singing by a jeepney, barefoot and smiling through his sorrow. That video began to spread, small ripples across the digital sea. But Miguel didn't know it yet. All he knew was that life was asking him to choose between two impossible things: stay and take care of his ailing mother, or chase a dream that might never come true. The conflict tore at his heart, the love of a son versus the longing of an artist. Both were powerful. Both were painful. And both would soon lead him to the moment that would define his life forever. It happened on an ordinary morning, the kind that began with the sound of vendors shouting and the smell of fried rice drifting through the narrow streets. Miguel was sitting outside the small clinic, softly strumming his old guitar, waiting for news about his mother. He didn't know that somewhere across the ocean, millions of people were watching him. The video, the one taken by a stranger weeks ago, had gone viral overnight. A barefoot Filipino boy singing Hotel California, with nothing but a cracked guitar and a hopeful heart. People called him the boy with the golden voice. And among those people was Amelia Rivera, a Filipino-American talent scout working with America's Got Talent. Amelia had spent years searching for raw, unpolished talent, voices that told stories, not just hit notes. When she watched Miguel's video, she felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just his singing, it was the ache behind it, the honesty of someone who had lived every word he sang. Without hesitation, she reached out to a local organization in Manila and began searching for him. Miguel was stunned when he heard the news. The organization offered to cover the cost of his flight, his accommodation, even his mother's medical care during his absence. For the first time, fate seemed to be giving him a choice, not between love and dreams, but between fear and faith. That night, he sat beside Rosa's bed, his fingers intertwined with hers. She smiled weakly, whispering that he should go, that sometimes, God opens a door only once. Her words stayed with him like a prayer. The next morning, Miguel packed his small bag, a few clothes, a photo of his mother, and his old guitar. As the plane lifted off from Manila, he looked out the window, watching the city shrink below him. For the first time, he wasn't just chasing survival, he was chasing destiny. He didn't know what awaited him in America. But deep down, a quiet voice whispered that everything was about to change. The days leading up to the audition were harder than Miguel ever imagined. America was dazzling, bright lights, wide streets, and faces that didn't know his story. For a boy who had once sung beside jeepneys, standing inside a hotel room felt unreal. But with every new sight came fear, fear that he didn't belong here, that his voice, shaped by hardship, wouldn't be enough for a stage this grand. He practiced every night in his small hotel bathroom, whispering the lyrics to Hotel California, so he wouldn't disturb anyone. Sometimes his hands trembled, his throat tightened, and memories of home filled his mind, his mother's weak smile, the smell of boiled corn, the sound of rain on tin. He missed her terribly. The distance between them wasn't measured in miles, but in longing. When Amelia visited him backstage, she found him sitting alone, clutching his guitar. He wasn't nervous about the judges or the cameras, he was afraid of failing the people who believed in him. What if I forget the words? What if I'm not good enough, he whispered to himself. But in that fragile fear, something powerful began to grow. Miguel realized that every struggle he had faced, every tear, every hungry night, had shaped his song. His pain wasn't a weakness, it was the story his voice was meant to tell. He began to understand that success wasn't about perfection. It was about truth, about singing with a heart that had lived, lost, and still dared to hope. That night, as he looked out at the glittering city through his window, he made a quiet promise to himself, no matter what happens, I'll sing like it's my last song. In that moment, Miguel stopped being the poor boy from the streets. He became something else, a soul ready to turn pain into power, fear into faith, and dreams into destiny. The theater lights dimmed, and a hush fell over the crowd. The AGT logo glowed behind the stage, and Miguel stood in the center, his small frame nearly swallowed by the grandness of it all. The judges sat before him, faces expectant. Simon Cowell leaned forward slightly, curious but unreadable. The world watched in silence. Then, the first chords of Hotel California began to echo. Miguel's fingers trembled on the guitar strings, but the sound was pure, fragile, like the first drop of rain. His voice followed, soft and trembling at first, then rising with a strength that no microphone could contain. Each word carried the weight of his life, the nights under neon lights, the ache of hunger, the memory of his mother's smile. The audience leaned closer, drawn into the story behind the melody. It wasn't just a performance, it was a confession, a boy pouring his soul into every note, telling the world, I am here. I am alive. As the song built to its chorus, the cameras caught tears glistening in the eyes of the judges. Even Simon, known for his unshakable composure, blinked rapidly, his jaw tightening. The final verse came like a whisper, soft, haunting, and filled with all the love Miguel couldn't put into words. When the last note faded, silence hung heavy in the air. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then, a roar of applause exploded through the theater. The crowd rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, crying. Simon stood too, his eyes wet, and before Miguel could even breathe, the judge slammed his hand down on the golden buzzer. Golden confetti rained from the ceiling, falling around the boy who once sang on the streets for coins. Miguel froze, tears streaming down his cheeks as he looked up, letting the shimmering light touch his skin. Somewhere in the crowd, Amelia cried too, proud, relieved, and overwhelmed. In that golden storm, Miguel wasn't a poor boy anymore. He was a voice that had found its place in the world, a dream that had finally come home. When the confetti settled and the cheers faded into memory, Miguel stood quietly on that vast stage, the same boy, the same heart, only now surrounded by light instead of shadows. In that moment, he understood something deeper than fame or applause. The world had not changed overnight, he had. He realized that life's greatest victories are not born in comfort, but in struggle. Every time he sang through hunger, every night he wiped his mother's tears, every coin he earned under the rain, all of it had prepared him for this single moment. Pain had not broken him, it had polished him. His scars had become his song. Back in Manila, Rosa watched the performance on a small television in the clinic. She pressed her hands to her face, weeping not from sadness but from gratitude. Her son, the boy who once sang for strangers, was now touching the hearts of millions. She whispered a prayer, thanking life for letting her live long enough to see her child shine. Miguel's story became more than a viral headline. It became a reminder that dreams do not belong only to those born into privilege. Sometimes, the purest voices rise from the most forgotten corners. Sometimes, the boy with nothing ends up giving the world everything. He continued to sing, not for fame, but for all the children who still sang in the streets, for every mother still waiting, and for every heart that had ever been told it wasn't enough. His journey reminded people that hope is not a luxury, it's a choice. And as his golden moment replayed across the world, one truth echoed louder than the applause. No dream is too far when it's carried by faith. No voice is too small when it speaks from the soul. For in the end, it wasn't just Miguel who won, it was every dreamer who had ever dared to believe that even from the darkest street, a song could still reach the stars.